So how should you price your funding program? In reality, you can charge quite a bit of money, but only if you structure it correctly. So in this video, I'll show you how to maximize how much you charge for your program while also maximizing how many sales you get. So we'll go over how to maximize the LTV per client while also maximizing the upfront fee and overall how to maximize the amount of sales that we get. So I see a lot of funding coaches try the zero money down up front. However, it takes them way too long to actually go through the funding process and actually collect that money. So it really slows down their growth. And I also see a lot of funding coaches try to undersell their program, but they tend to really limit how much money they could actually generate. So we're gonna go over exactly how to break everything down so you can really maximize and grow a lot faster. So we'll first go over your avatar. This is very important because that's going to shape the entire pricing, but also the program that you create. So there's really three main questions to go over. Who do you actually typically work with? How much money do they typically want? And how much do you typically get them? So how much do you get? How much do they want? And who do you work with? Because for someone that's trying to work with real estate investors that need over $200,000 of funding, that might be a slower funding process, but you might be able to help them get obviously more funding. But if you're working with someone that's an online coach or online fitness coach, well, they might not need $200,000, but you could potentially have a higher volume of clients if you structure it correctly to be able to just get them through your program a lot faster. So really, it's who do you typically work with, how much do they typically want, and how much do you actually get them on average. So once you understand these key concepts, now we have the different ways to actually structure your program. So there's a flat fee model, flat fee, or a success-based fee. So basically, a flat fee is going to have a standard program cost. So this is signing up for an ads training, a sales course, something that just has a fixed price. A success fee model is going to be contingent. So basically contingent on your results. So this might have a goal price, or it might just have an overall percentage price. So depending on the type of client that you work with, it's really important to understand, again, how much do they want, because this will determine what type of pricing should we actually go after. So if we're working with a client that typically only needs about $50,000 to $100,000, well, we do have the option of charging a percentage, but really in most cases, most people don't charge more than 10% for a success fee, right? So let's say, for example, that this client wants the $100,000. Well, the absolute max that you could make for this client will be $10K. But there also might be a lot of your clients that only need $50,000, right? So in this case, the 10% would represent $5,000. And so in most cases, you're probably going to land somewhere in the middle, probably around that $7K mark, right? So what you could do is have the entire success fee on the back end, which is fine, but now you have the factor of having to wait for that success fee, which takes time, and then you finally make your commission, right? But if your average client is only going to make you about $7,000, well, the average funding program that doesn't charge a success fee typically charges around $6,000 to $8,000, right, for a flat fee. So instead of really optimizing for that back end, understanding that your client really only needs up to about $100,000 on average, well, why not charge somewhere in this middle as a flat fee, right? So what you could do, for example, is charge $6,000 for your program. You could do either full payments up front. You could do a split payments for monthly or weekly, right? So we've charged actually up to $10,000 for a flat fee program, but we broke it down into weekly payments so that it was actually very affordable. So it came out to around $325 a week or so, which seemed very low as an upfront cost, but because it was dragged out, we were able to collect more money. But that's one way that you could really structure your program, understanding that your average client really only needs somewhere in that average amount that's only going to represent maybe $7,000, which let's say you only charge 6,000, is maybe a little bit higher, but you're guaranteeing the revenue and you're also most likely collecting a lot more upfront. In this case, I would really recommend charging at least half of it for your monthly splits. If you're charging more than 6,000, the weekly could probably make sense, but monthly is going to be a great price for you if you're around that, again, mark right here. If you have someone that needs, on average, less than $100,000, you really have no reason to charge a success fee. So the next client here might be someone that needs a little bit more funding. Let's say that, for example, they're looking to make an investment, or they typically have larger monthly expenses. So maybe an e-commerce brand, for example. Well, an e-commerce brand might need somewhere between 100K to 200K of funding. So this is going to be a little bit more. It's going to take a little bit more work, right? So for this client, we can get them there with a little 50K win with Chase and maybe 2 cards at Amex, right? 2 times 40 or 2 times 20K with Amex. And you already got this client the results they wanted very, very quickly, right? But if they need somewhere around $150,000, well, you have to be a little bit more creative. Nowadays, the lending industry is a little bit tighter, so we have to do a little bit more work. Okay, so in this case, let's say the client, again, needs around 100K. This would represent that 10K, right, based on the 10% success fee. If they need $200,000, well, now that would represent about $20,000. And I'm basing this off of 10%, which some people charge as low as 6%. We were charging closer to 8% myself when we had a success fee based contingent pricing. So 10's like on the higher end as well. So let's say, for example, that they need 10K, right? Right here, 200,000 is 20K. So let's say on average, this client would represent $15,000. So the reason we would not charge, in this case, a flat fee is because this is basically almost 3 times higher than what a 6K would represent, and just about twice as high as what an $8,000 would represent, right? So in this case, we have to have some kind of higher pricing, but it doesn't make most sense for people to pay you $15,000 if we're not really having some kind of a, not exactly a guarantee, but basically, right? So a success fee is a form of guarantee because you don't get paid, no pay for no results. So that's an inherent guarantee because you only get paid, you're incentivized to actually get them results. So that's why if we start to cross really over 10K plus, a success fee really kind of becomes necessary. So at this point, a success fee can be based on 2 different angles. So it can be goal oriented, or it can be just general percentage. So a goal is something that we've used in my business. I actually do like it quite a bit. So this is going to be basically based on a certain threshold that we're shooting for. So let's say, for example, that you get paid a success fee once you qualify for a minimum, basically means a minimum of a certain amount of funding. So in this case, it might be 150K, which would represent that average amount that you're looking for, right? It might be a minimum of 200,000 or 300,000. But the higher you go, obviously the higher perceived value. However, the higher perceived difficulty, higher time to get there as well. So ideally you want to find that perfect middle. So going back to your average client, right? So who do you work with? So basically, if it's someone that's in a difficult industry, well, now you have to additionally get them an LLC established. You might have to buy them an H Corp, right? So it becomes a little bit of a longer process, right? How much do they typically want? Well, again, that's going to depend on your success fee, what have you. But being able to understand exactly what's the average client, now we can build towards this. So if it's going to require more work, if it's going to take more time, we might end up charging a higher success fee, but it could end up being also a higher funding amount as well. So that's like a goal-oriented one. A percentage-based one is simply, we just charge you 8% flat. 10% flat based on a funding amount. You can also do it greater than a certain number. So let's say, for example, that's you start to charge a percentage only after achieving a certain funding amount. So we've also done that in my business as well. We've literally tested everything, right? So we, for example, have had an admin fee. That's typically what I recommend, right? An admin fee plus a success fee. Because again, a lot of funding coaches try this zero money down, right? Because they think that it's an unbeatable offer, that's a no-brainer, right? Someone can get started with you without paying any money. But what's the problem here? Well, you're going to have poor quality clients because now you're working with people that don't have any money. You're going to have low engagements as well, right? People don't value things they don't pay for, they get for free, right? So if they are not actually committing anything with you, they're going to drag their feet through optimization. It's going to make this process even longer. And obviously, you're going to have a big problem with scaling because now you have to wait this time to collect your fee before being able to pay more money for ads to go get your next client. Really, an admin fee upfront is necessary so that we can have higher quality clients. We can get more work done, a lot faster results, and we have the money that we need to pay for this client, plus go get the next clients. All right. So that's the goal right here of having an admin fee plus a success fee. So now that we go back, we're understanding our average client. So let's say our average client needs around that 100 to 200K. How can we really make this a great offer for them while also maximizing our LTV? So really this client would on average represent 15K. Well, now our goal of having to think about it is how do we really break this down to make it a no-brainer for them, maximize our LTV? So what we've typically done is have either a larger upfront with that success fee goal oriented. So that could be, for example, maybe a 5K upfront plus another 10K success fee. So that's leaning more on the backside. For example, you could have a 2K upfront plus maybe an 8% success fee. So we've done that ourselves. But really, I've never had a success fee or an admin fee rather that's been below $2,000 because I have a cost to acquire this client, and ideally I want to pay for the next one so I have basically unlimited scaling potential. So here are two ways, for example, you could structure it if you don't really have any additional services attached to it. But however, we have a newer program ourselves, which is funding through acquisition, in which they get funding plus an Age Corp. So it's included in the price, right? So now we're able to charge more upfront because there's an additional value inherently. So we're able to charge 10K upfront, no split payments, nothing like that. It's upfront, so we retain a lot of money right here. Again, for ads, for our costs, for our sales team, etc., plus 5K success fee. So this is for a client that would need closer to that $200,000. Right? So we're really just kind of extremely valuing our program because now they have an Age Corp. They're still getting their 150K plus funding amount, closer to really the 200K because we're using an Age Corp. It makes it very, very easy to get that amount of funding. And so this is why we've been selling it like crazy, even though we have such a large upfront cost to get in the program. So that's how you'd really structure it for a client that's around this mark right here. If you don't have any additional kind of secret sauces to it, you can have really one of these two structures right here. So a larger upfront with a big success fee on the back end, or somewhat of a smaller upfront with a contingency success fee. All right. Because if you do end up being, 13K success, it starts to sound kind of big, right? Because in their mind, they're starting to pay quite a bit of money after the funding. So that's why I like to have it kind of split up with a percentage based if it's going to be above $10,000, basically. So really anything below 10K or below, you can just charge the flat fee. But once it starts to get above 10K, it starts to sound like a lot on the contract. It just looks like a base number. So a percentage base starts to make more sense. So now let's go over a client that needs over 200K of funding. All right, so this might be a real estate investor, for example, that's looking to purchase another property. However, right now he doesn't want to go through the traditional short-term lending options that tend to cost a lot of money, right? So instead, they want to go through us to qualify for this amount of funding. However, to get over $200,000 now is going to require an established business that either has history and or receipts, basically. So proof of income, because $200,000, you're going to need a lot more than just business credit cards. So at this point, you probably have to go after BLOCs, loans, and you need to have in a business that's at least 2 years plus to be able to qualify. And if you really want to maximize, they're going to need some kind of proof of income to be able to even get into these products. However, there are a lot of banks that do offer these without proof of documents, just like Truist or Wells Fargo, for example. So it's going to depend on the client. But if the client needs over $200,000 of funding, it's again going to depend on who do we work with, right? So does this person typically have money to put down up front because we're providing so much value? How much do they typically want? And how much do you typically get? Okay, so I wouldn't promise the world and charge these huge fees if you don't really get those kind of results. And I wouldn't charge so much up front if the person doesn't typically have that kind of financing. So if this person needs over 200K on average, let's say, for example, you're in the trucking industry, right? So these people don't typically have a whole lot of cash available, but there is an option for you to end up getting them up to $200,000. So let's say, for example, you kind of stack your offer. So you charge a certain fee to get them a beginning and then the final funding. So one way to get a trucking client results, so a trucking client would be to get them a consulting business, a standard funding, basically. Consulting business, get them like 100K of funding, and now they got that just with business credit cards, right? But that's obviously not the goal that they wanted. They wanted $200,000 plus. Well, what you could do then is then use that funding to purchase an aged corp. Now you can go after BLOCs and loans, and then now you can go after an additional 150K of funding, right? So for this kind of client, now it's someone that didn't really have that much money up front, okay? So that's something that we have to understand. We can't really charge that much up front, but we can charge more money throughout, so during and at the end. So in this case, I would maybe start with this client having that 6K flat fee, for example, to get them up to that $100,000. So how do we break this down? Flat fee. You can have it as a split payment, for example, so that 3 and 3, right? 3 and 3. Now we got them 100K of funding. They can use 100K of funding to, for example, pay you to get an aged corp. Okay, so you can upcharge on these aged corps. You might charge somewhere between $3,000 to $10,000. Your cost is usually going to be maybe around 3 to 4K. So either you just give it to them, which is probably not recommended, or you can upcharge them a little bit. So maybe you charge them $5,000. Let's say you charge them $5,000 right here. So now you just collected an extra 2K. Okay, so far you made 6 here, 2,000 here, and then you could have a success fee based on actually getting them results with that aged corp. So you could charge them, let's say, 15,000 on the back end. So now you're charging them 15K to basically get $200,000 of funding. So it's a lower perceived cost, but you just made 15 plus 6 plus 2, which equals $23,000. All right, and that's a no-brainer offer for this person because they're getting 200K of funding with $3,000 down. And then you're helping them get there through your strategic financing. So that's one way to kind of break it down while still maximizing. So in this case, we still made $3,000 to acquire this client, but we really maximized the LTV because we got a little bit more creative and we had to do a little bit more work for them. All right. But let's say, for example, that we're working with a real estate investor that also needs 200K plus, but he has the money to put down. So, for example, we're working with a client that has the construction industry as an average client. So these people have inherent funds to put down. So you could charge 10K up front for this client very easily, okay, because they have that kind of money. Right now, they're really just working with you because they want strategic financing. It's a very different type of client. So they have the money to charge up front, so maximize that for sure. 10K is more than enough money to get that client, probably your next 4 or 5 clients at least. So we're maximizing the upfront right here. I wouldn't go over 10K, but we're maximizing the upfront. And then we can have a success fee contingent on how much we get. So again, we could go for a goal or a just flat percentage. So for this one, they're probably going to have a very specific goal in mind. So I think a goal would make more sense for this kind of client. So it might be an investor or a construction type of industry. So in this case, you might have a fee once they get 200K plus of funding. So the reason that they're coming for you, however, is that they want strategic financing. So in this case, I would probably maybe charge that $5,000 on the back end, right? In this case, because you're charging so much money up front, the percentage really doesn't make sense in this case. So we're really just looking to charge as much money up front. We can get more clients a lot faster. And because they already have most likely a business established, we might have to get an H Corp or what have you. The funding should be relatively fast for the type of individual that has money. They don't have bad credit. So that's how I would structure this one basically right here. So maybe more of a goal oriented. We're still making that, again, for this kind of client, we're making 15K on average, right? Well, here we're just doing more of it up front with that 10K while still having a great return on the back end for actually getting them results with that 5K on the back end with the success fee. But that's exactly how I break down how do I actually price the different types of offers for the different types of clients that I work with so that I can, again, maximize how much money we charge on the upfront so I can pay to acquire that client, for the ads, for my team, while also maximizing how much money this client represents for us so we can scale a lot faster. So hopefully this makes sense for you. This is the exact same process that I go through with my clients inside of Credit Coach Academy. We understand their ideal avatar and what exactly they can do for them so we can price the entire offer together and really help them maximize the results. So if you want to know exactly what that looks like, if you want to work with me a little bit closer in my one-on-one mentorship, then click on the link down below to learn more about my Credit Coach Academy. Otherwise, I hope this video is very helpful for you and you learned something so now you can price your offer to sell a lot more deals. So thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.